G'day everyone, I'm the Gravetender, and welcome to the other side. The day is June 4th, 2012. E3 has kicked off a new season of gaming, and Ubisoft has debuted its newest and most ambitious IP. It is a game that has promised players control over a vast city, full of unique people with diverse backgrounds, and by taking full advantage of next generation tech, would give you a visually spectacular experience. Yet it wouldn't be until 2020 that we were given the means to not only control these people, but use their skills and unique backgrounds to determine the fate of London. But what would be the price of such innovation? Well, let's talk about it. This is Watch Dogs Legion. Now, I should say that I've always been a fan of the Watch Dogs series. The first one certainly had its faults, but it clearly held a lot of potential. Plus, I never got tired of shutting off all the lights in an entire city. The second game expanded upon established ideas and provided us with a cast of likable characters to follow, giving it a more vibrant tone compared to the first game. By comparison, Legion's tone and overall presentation seems to be on the borderline between its predecessors. In some cases, this works, and other times, it doesn't. The player is once again following in the footsteps of hacker group DedSec, who, after trying to prevent a massive terrorist attack on London, are framed for the attack and promptly lose most of their members in the process. As a result, you're forced to start from scratch with only the bare essentials and a single operative at your disposal. So begins the campaign, and during your playtime you'll be travelling all over London. From Westminster to Southwark, you'll be working to inspire the people to rise up and fight back against Albion. Whether it be by freeing captors, delivering valuables, assaulting enemy compounds, or simply by hacking into anything that might help your cause. From security cameras to a myriad of drones and vehicles, the whole city is at your disposal. However, what will separate Watch Dogs Legion from any other open world game on the market right now isn't what was carried over from previous titles, but rather what was introduced. Throughout the game world are an immeasurable number of NPCs populating London, and you can recruit any of them into your makeshift resistance. Each one of these characters has a distinct look, background, and skills to them, which can provide them with their own benefits in-game. So your goal right from the get-go is to put together a kick-ass team of hackers before setting off to find out who's behind the elusive group Zero Day, and discover their motives for attacking London. It's a pretty compelling plot, at least at first. However, it gradually starts to lose steam as you play the game, and I believe the biggest reason why is because none of the characters you can play as are actual characters. As I said, as you play the game, you have the option to recruit all kinds of people throughout the world, from construction workers to hospital staff, spies, janitors, old ladies, and even those who are working for the enemy. Most of these characters require you to complete a mission in order to recruit them, while some of them are actually rewarded to you for freeing the many districts throughout the world, so you're actively encouraged to seek new people out since some of them possess skills which are rarer than others. Many characters enable you to access restricted areas, essentially allowing you to walk in and out of an enemy base without anyone even knowing you were there, avoiding any potential conflict and saving you time, while some characters come equipped with drones, specialized weapons, and other tech that can tear through entire hordes of enemies. Ubisoft really did put in a lot of work into making these NPCs a sought-after resource. However, here lies the problem. By treating these NPCs as tools and not actual people, you don't feel emotionally attached to them. As the game progresses, you naturally find new characters which have better skills and better weapons on them, so you tend to use those ones more, while the other characters you have are quickly forgotten. They become as replaceable as loot drops you'd get in an RPG. Furthermore, many of these characters share the same voice actors and lines, so it's kinda hard to find anyone compelling when they don't say anything original or unexpected. As a result, any potential character arcs or story developments are reserved for the side characters, while you, as the player, are essentially watching from the sidelines. Even when you're conducting an investigation or studying the aftermath of some major event, I never felt as though my character was directly involved in anything that was going on. They were just there, watching things unfold. It was really annoying, to be honest. Still, that's not to say the side characters aren't interesting. In fact, the vast majority of the allies and the villains that you meet in this game are interesting enough that it makes you wonder why any of them couldn't be the focus of this game's story. But instead, we had Zero Day as the main villain, and I'm not gonna lie, both the identity and the motives of this character turned out to be a real disappointment. Compared to the other villains we got, their motives and ideals were pretty weak. I guess I was just expecting someone more captivating than who we got in the end. Still, they did manage to set up a pretty good mystery for them, and looking back, the clues to their identity were there from the start. Yet, it's this noticeable detachment to the main story that has proven to weaken the game. It's likely why the game developers insist on you playing Watch Dogs Legion with permadeath active, since this mechanic adds more weight to the possibility of a character's death and forces you to be more cautious in-game, since one slip-up can cause you to lose a character permanently. Furthermore, if all your characters die, then the game is over and you have to start the whole campaign from scratch. On paper, it sounds like a simple and effective way to instill tension in the player, but like I said, there's thousands of NPCs to recruit in-game, and most of the missions to recruit them usually range from stealing something or killing someone, which in the early game would be a challenge due to how unprepared you are. But by the mid-game, you would have upgraded your gear to such an extent that you can easily deal with any possible threat that might come your way, especially since the robot spider you start the game with enables you to easily enter hostile locations without actually needing to put your character in any physical danger. So that tension you once felt gradually dissipates as you play, especially once you learn how broken certain gameplay mechanics are. The robot spider, for instance, can be summoned and recalled at a moment's notice, so if you're ever in danger of your robot spider being found, you can just return to your character and recall it, negating the need to wait out the item's recharge time. Furthermore, the spider can also perform stealth takedowns, and when upgraded will be able to turn invisible, so you can basically clear out an entire enemy base without ever needing to fire your gun. While I will admit the controls for the spider are finely tuned, which is needed for some of the platforming sections, the power the single device gives you in the game world is absurd. It also doesn't help that you start the game with the robot spider ready to be equipped to all of your characters. By comparison, in Watch Dogs 2, you could acquire a set of drones which could then be deployed at a moment's notice, however you didn't start the game with them and they possessed no combat capabilities. Furthermore, due to their limited mobility, they couldn't single-handedly take down an enemy outpost. Instead, they encouraged you to utilize the game's stealth mechanics to their fullest, unlike the robot spider in Legion. Simply put, Watch Dogs Legion does a poor job of balancing the power scaling in-game, and this only becomes more noticeable once you start recruiting people. Within the first few missions in-game, you're given the chance to recruit a construction worker with an ability to summon a cargo drone at will. This drone, unlike the others, which are mostly designed for combat, allows you to carry your characters pretty much everywhere. So being able to summon one at will, that basically allows you to fly over your enemies and drop yourself off wherever you want, like right at the objective, negating any need for sneaking around or engaging in combat. Granted, there are many instances in which Ubisoft forces the players into combat. Even if your character has no combat-related skills, you can still equip them with a grenade launcher and a shotgun, which can both one-shot most enemies. Still, for what it is worth, the shooting mechanics in Legion are easily the most refined and well executed in the whole series. There's a good mix of both lethal and non-lethal weapons you can find, and there are many gadgets at your disposal that can help you improve your odds in some of the tougher firefights. Although I've got to ask, why are we given the option of lethal and non-lethal weapons in this series when it makes no real difference from a gameplay perspective? It could be argued that the lethal option provides you with a higher damage output, but to be honest I didn't notice any real differences when in combat. Furthermore, the characters don't act differently if you simply choose to kill everyone in your way. It's not like Dishonored where every kill can bring the world closer to the brink of chaos. Thankfully, stealth remains mostly unchanged from previous entries, aside from some new gadgets at your disposal of course. You're given visible indicators to let you know if an enemy is alluded to your presence, and with a plethora of new ways to sneak into hostile locations, it's always fun to try and complete a mission without being seen by enemies. Personally, I admire Ubisoft for giving players this many ways to approach one situation, but when you have certain skills that can easily trump anything that comes your way, there's really no need to put your upgrade points in anything else. So by the mid-game, most players would have understood the mechanics of this game well enough that you can pretty much handle anything that comes your way. Whether through brute force or by abusing the tech at your disposal, Watch Dogs Legion can quickly become a chore to play through. Still, I won't deny, from a visual standpoint, this is easily the best looking game in the franchise. On the PS5, the environments simply shine, and the natural weather only makes the world feel more alive. This version of London is certainly a pretty sight, and I never tire of seeing the city from above. I just wish that when it came to the NPC designs that they offered us some more variety, especially with the models' faces. For what I've seen, there's only around 20 to 30 different faces on these models, and by the end of the story, you would have seen each and every one of them at least a dozen times. Copy and pasting the same NPCs repeatedly isn't anything new when it comes to open world games, but when you're selling a game on the premise of recruiting those NPCs to fight for you, then it quickly becomes tiresome. As for side content, there's not much on offer. There's several collectibles and activities to do throughout the world, and most of the minigames you can find aren't overly difficult. From what I can see, they're mostly there just to provide a couple extra achievements and nothing else really. For what they're worth, the soccer game is a fun and slightly challenging rhythm game, while the dart minigame is all based on timing and proper positioning. Also, I have to say that I'm happy Ubisoft didn't include an online feature in this game. I've always felt that the invasion and online modes in previous games were unnecessary. They didn't really add anything substantial to the overall experience, and half the time they were more of a nuisance. Often they'd interrupt the flow of gameplay just to accommodate them. Still, you'd think without an online mode that Ubisoft would have been able to spend more time on refining this game. Despite its massive scale, on more than one occasion I encountered a glitch that disrupted my game or forced me to restart it entirely. Although if there's one aspect of this series that I really wished Ubisoft had improved upon, that would be the soundtrack. Ubisoft has already established themselves for having some of the best soundtracks in gaming, however I've always found that Watch Dogs to be the exception to this, because aside from some of the music that's played whenever you're driving, the game is mostly without background music of any kind, and unlike in horror games, the eerie silence does extraordinarily little to build upon this game's more profound moments. Ubisoft is really working hard to give players as much freedom as possible in their games, but I feel like Legion was a real step down. Don't get me wrong, I still had a fun time with the game, they've clearly improved upon many key areas, but it was hard to get invested in the story when the player's given no real character arc and most of the development in the story is done by the side characters. This was an interesting experiment by Ubisoft, but if I had a choice between Legion and one of the earlier titles, I'd probably go with Watch Dogs 2 over this, because at least that game had a narrative that didn't feature a group of stock soundboards as its main cast. Although, I won't deny, electrocuting people as a tiny robot spider, that will never get old. Anyway, that's all the time we have for today. I'm the Grave Tender, and thank you for joining me on the other side. I hope you all have a nice day.